Alright, I'm gonna explain pretty in-depth how we make a projectile in YomiHustle. It's a little bit more complicated, it requires some coding, but I just want to show you a little bit of theory at the start and how Yomi handles projectiles and objects. Right, we have two players, right? These are fighter objects. We have player 1 and player 2, right? Both of these have basically a little list of different objects. Everything they spawned is in this list, right? Like a particle system, an effect, or whatever. And projectiles are also part of this, right? So if you want to spawn in our projectile, this projectile here goes into our list, all right? Probably more at the bottom. There you go. Right? It goes into our list. So basically, and then it goes into a list and it shoots, it does something, probably hit an enemy, and then it gets not erased, but like it gets disabled. In Yomi, projectiles never, or an object never really get fully deleted somehow. But yeah. So we have this one deleted after, right? After it does something. And then we spawn another one, right? Under that, for example. So now, our main things we have to do here are the following. We have to one, make sure our character somehow spawns a projectile or an object that we then modify to the point where it's a projectile, right? This is gonna be spawn. And then number 2, it's gonna be the projectile should do stuff. So I'm gonna now move around, maybe have a hitbox. So this is gonna be behavior, right? BE, I guess. And then number 3, what we're gonna do at the end is make sure stuff works properly. We're just gonna call this debugging, right? So what if it hits a wall? What if it hits another projectile, you know? What if they both clash? What happens then? These are the 3 things we need to do. They're not that crazy. They require a little bit of coding. This requires I have a little notepad here. This requires like, I don't know, like 6 lines of coding, 6C, and this other thing requires like around 20, like spawning it, like the main thing. This is just like clicking, right? This is like no code. It's just clicking around, and or maybe like that requires around 3 lines of code. Right, the main behavior, we're gonna do simple. We're gonna shoot it forward. It's gonna be like, I don't know, roughly 3 lines of code, and then the debugging is probably gonna be the best. The biggest one is around 20 lines of code. But in the end, it's not that crazy. But you will have to touch code here. I will explain every single line, everything does, and even if you have no coding knowledge, I think it might make sense to you. Okay, so we have our character here. It's the ranger example. And first, we need some kind of, number 1, right? We need to spawn it in. So normally this is done with a state, right? You pull your arrow back, and then on frame whatever, you spawn your projectile. So we're just gonna do that. So I have already one here. I'm just gonna call this direct shot. And then I don't really have an animation for this, but yeah. So this is all like not that important. There's 2 ways to spawn. You can see this projectile with the projectile scene. We're gonna do it by hand. We're gonna basically do the same thing as here. But I wanna explain it a little bit more. And then we can add more stuff later on if you would have wanted to make it more complex. This is a very simple setup, and we cannot send data with this. The projectile scene attached here cannot send data. It just spawns it, that's it. Alright, we're just gonna call this direct shot. We add a little icon. And there you go. First things first, we need a state, and we have the state, the number 1, tell the state it should shoot something. So I have an empty state here, gonna duplicate, and we're just gonna call this direct shot state. I'm just gonna double click. It should start with character state here, right? It's a part of the character. So this is pretty straightforward. So we need to do some things, right? We need to spawn a projectile. So there's a function called spawn object. We can look at it by Control-Shift-F, right? We got spawn object. We can look at all the code in all files, so you can get a lot of examples. As you can see, we have one here from the sticky bomb throw. I'm just gonna copy this just to show you something real quick. You can see the way Ivy does this is he always uses hard paths, which works for him, but it's bad for modding and it could break your character in the future. So please, if you ever see preload and the path, it is bad, don't use this. I'm gonna show you one way to do it without the preload, and it's actually shorter and more, it's one more line of code, but it's more visible. So we're gonna do export. That means we can access it from within the engine. If you click something here on the right, you see all of this, all of these options. All of these options are called export, so that we can put stuff in here, right? Basically, it's dynamic content. It needs to be a packed scene. And then it's gonna be a variable, that's fine. And then we just need to call it something. We're just gonna call this straight shot scene, right? And then instead of preload, remove all this mumbo jumbo, put this in. You see how this is a little bit more cleaner, and also it's dynamic. That means you can also rename your scene, you can move it around, you can rename folders, you never need to worry about this breaking. It's really nice. Okay, that's the first thing. Now we have some leftover numbers here, 0 and -16, and you don't know what it does. You can always try to find where it's defined, right? We're gonna do this real quick. Control-Shift-F. We're just gonna do, we know it's spawn object, so we can just look up function spawn or func spawn object and look, and you can see this should where it is defined. You can see, oh, it's defined here. Whatever this is, don't worry about all of this shit. We can see spawn object, packed scene, position, relative, and there's the data I was talking about, which is by default nothing, and local true, right? So this is cool. So we know that this is X and this is Y. So if you go back, this is X and this is Y. We want them to be more, we want to actually set up where it should spawn. So we're gonna make exports again. I'm gonna call this export, a variable or var, projectile, pause X equals 0, and then exports var projectile pause Y, also 0, right? And then instead of that, we're just gonna do a dynamic again, right? There we go. So cool. So now we spawn it in. Problem is, we don't need to save this as variable here. Like, that's fine, we can remove it, but we're spawning something in, and that is we're doing something. So we have to actually define where it should happen, right? Right now, this is just definition stuff. So we're gonna tell the game when this should happen, the spawn object, by calling function, underline frame, underline, and then you can put any number, basically which frame it should spawn on, or tick, right? So I'm gonna do frame 10, for example, and then don't forget you need to indent this once. So now this is all we need. So this is the entire thing for our state. And now if you click our state, you want to attach that script, right? Always click the wrench and click copy properties, because if you drag it in normally, it will remove all the stuff above. It's stupid, it's just how GoNode works, but just drag in the direct shot like here. And then we're gonna go paste, right? So all the options from before are back again. Now as you can see at the bottom here, straight shot scene, that's exactly this, and project. This is our 3 exports we created. If you want to have one of these headers, you have to do, I believe, var underline C underline the category, and then we just gonna call this custom shot stuff equals 0. I think this should be it. Of course, export. Sorry. So you can see now we got this yellow thingy. These only pop up if you have now in project settings, plugins, export categories, these ones. If you have this one enabled, then you can see the yellow headers. Right. So this is, as I said, this is just visuals to show it up here. It doesn't do anything. It's just so, oh, okay, we can see our stuff is here. We probably want to spawn this like -10, a little bit upwards and maybe a little bit forward. Good. So that is that. That's the easy part. Okay, so now we're gonna create our object, our scene, right? Our packed scene, our straight shot scene. So let's create these. We start with what is called a base projectile, because that's the game already has it from Ivy already made this, so this is really good to use. We're just gonna base projectile, gonna right click it, go new inherited scene. We have an unherited scene, we're gonna go scene save as, and then we're gonna find our ranger, and then we're just gonna put this here, just gonna call this direct shot scene. Okay, cool. Now we have an empty scene. Open this up, gonna click 2D. As you can see, there's not much here, and as you can see up there's also not much here, but this is the same setup like how a character is set up. So like a object or projectile is just like basically a smaller version of a character. You can actually put a whole character in here if you wanted to. Anyway, so we need to give it some kind of a look first, so we're not confused. I'm gonna click the sprite object, then I'm gonna click the drop down here in frames and click new sprite frames. And then I'm gonna click it, and then we can put our little visual arrow in here. Okay, nice. Now we have a very basic look. Now we go to the collision and hurt box and maybe adjust this a little bit. Alright, there you go. And now we need a hurt box, right? So we can copy any hurt box from anything, even from a normal attack. I'm just gonna copy this from our normal melee attack. Right, I'm gonna go here, hitbox, right click copy. And I'm gonna click to our default state. This is the one that always runs at the start. Click paste. And I'm just gonna adjust this to make sense, right? Everything in here, that's normal. You can just set up the way you want it to be. Important, start tick should be 1, active tick should be 0, and always on, to make sure the hitbox is always there. Okay, cool. Now we need to do the behavior. The behavior we normally do inside the default state. You can also do it in the main object, but there's already a lot of stuff here. You can see like this, all this stuff. So we're just gonna go to the default, and it already has a script in here, see? Called the default fireball, I believe. Yeah, so this is like something Ivy made, but there's a lot of stuff. Like for example, it has like data and stuff like that. We're gonna make it very simple and start from scratch completely, and make it a little bit more simple for you to understand. So we're gonna make a new state, right click here on the new state thing, new script. I'm gonna call this direct shot default state. We're just gonna double click this, and this time it should be extends object state, because we're inside an object now, right? And then the usual, we click the wrench, copy this, move it in, and we're gonna paste it again. So now we can do all the behavior. So I'm gonna start with a very simple way to work, and then I'm gonna elaborate on it and work forward and make it work properly, because it will have issues. Because right now it's just an object. It's not really a projectile. We're calling it a projectile, but you know, it's just an object that sits there. So now we have to give it projectile-like attributes, like moving around, hitting people, what happens if you hit people, stuff like that. So we start with the function tick, which is every tick something happens. And then we just move it around, right? There's a function called move directly. Gonna use that. So host.move directly. And then it has two values, basically the x and y speed. So let's go 8, so that's forward speed, and then 0 upward speed, right? That's it, nothing else. This is already a quote-unquote working projectile. Not really, you will see why. But we're just gonna attach it, right? So we have our scene, we go back to Arranger, click the direct shot, and now we can see the empty export on the right here. We're just gonna drag in our direct shot scene like this. There you go. Alright, let's try it out. Ranger, cowboy, direct shot, it's here, nice. It shoots, but it's a little bit too low also. After it hits, it doesn't go away. Also, it flies forever, and it never stops, and it just sticks on the wall. So there's a bunch of things we have to fix. But it's already working. Alright, first things first, let's spawn a tire up. -18. Cool. Now we go in here, in our direct shot thing. Okay, so now we have to always keep track if it hits something. Maybe another projectile, maybe another player, or a wall. Alright, so we can just keep in track if it hits something or not. So we can just do a variable called hit something. I'm just going to do this false by normally. And then we make sure that we only move the object if it didn't hit anything. So if hit something, if not hit something, right? If it didn't hit something, then we move it. Now we have to make sure that we tell the game when it hits something. So let's start with the player. Right? If it hits the player, obviously it should disappear. So, cool thing, there's a function called onHitSomething that Ivy made. So you can just call this function onHitSomething object hitbox. There you go. So now you have to make sure that also the function works correctly, because we need to we editing the function that's already made, right? So that's why we use the dot on hit something object hitbox. What this does is it basically calls the function and executes it again. So now we can highbox, sorry. And now we basically make it so it works properly within the game mechanic. And now we add something at the bottom, right? So these two lines of code are just like, okay, so this function should have this stuff in it, and now we add more at the bottom. So we're gonna add, obviously, if you hit anything, we should put our hit something to true, but also we should disable the projectile or object. We're gonna call host disable, right? Like this. This comes from this thing here, the base projectile has a thing called disable, and it basically does everything for us. And yeah, Ivy made that, and that's nice. Alright, let's try it out. Now it should not hit, like if it hits the enemy, it should disappear, right? Ranger, wizard, let's shoot it. There we go. Alright, let's see. The first thing's working. What if you flip it? Oh, flipping doesn't work. Okay. What if we hit a wall? Let's see. Should probably. And it just gets stuck. Alright. So let's fix that it hits the wall. Basically, we just have to make sure that we are within the confines of the map, right? Left and right, we know how far away it is. So we can just check that. We can just do. First, we need to check the player position, or we're gonna save it real quick in a variable. So the position should be host.getPos. This is just me saving it, right? And now we check. What if the position is less than negative host.stage width? Right? So the stage has a certain width. What if it is lower than the stage width? Or position.x, oops, I forgot, position.x, or position.x is bigger than the positive stage host.stage width. Alright? Basically, we're just checking. Is it too much to the left? Is it too much to the right? If so, hit something equals true, and also host disable. I always write the wrong thing. I'm sorry. Hit something, of course. Alright, single player, ranger, wizard. Let's walk to the right first so I don't have to do that thing again. I'm gonna shoot. And that's here and it works. And it hits the wall and it's gone. Perfect. Now we can only shoot to the right. And that's another problem. And it also flips weird. We're gonna get around that in a second. Okay, so basically we have to make sure that 8 is just always to the right, no matter what. So if we shoot to the left, we want to be at -8. Cool thing is there's something that tells us if it's positive, if it goes to the right, it's just 1. If it goes to the left, it's -1. So we can multiply it, right? 8 times multiple -1 is -8. But we have host dot get facing int. So what this does, it's either 1 or -1. And we know which direction we're looking. So this should already fix shooting left or right. Now let's try it again. Ranger, robot this time. Right, see, we can shoot left and we can shoot right. There you go. Nice. Let's try jumping over and see what happens on the other side. Shooting left and shooting right. Nice. Now we have to fix that weird issue where it flips the projectile only in the ghost. Alright, like it looks fine. Now this is actually going backwards, the ghost is going forward. All kinds of things going on here. There's a little fix for that, and that is, I've already rewritten this one here. This is this function. So on frame 0, like on the very first frame when it spawns in, before it even moves, we're gonna check, right? We're gonna check if the host get facing int, if it's -1, right? So if it faces to the left or just faces away, depends how the game handles it. Then what we do is we're gonna flip it. So if you click the sprite object, you can see it has something called flip H, flip horizontal. As you can see, if I click, it flips it. So this is exactly what we're gonna use. So now we're gonna write host.sprite.flip underline H equals true, right? So if we look in the other way, we're gonna flip it as well visually. Let's try that out. Shoot. Oh, and you can see it looks nice. It flies to the left and the ghost is to the left. That's all you need. Let's check the other side. Okay, that looks fine. And what if you turn around? It also seems fine. Cool. So the only thing left is they're kind of flying forever until they hit something. If you want that, that's cool. But if not, we can just do a little lifetime, basically. We do a function. Frame, I would say maybe 25 frames. And then we're just gonna do hit something. Equals true. I mean, it didn't really hit something, but it just makes the projectile stop moving. I'll go host.disable again. And there we go. Now it should also disappear after 25 frames of being around. Let's see. There you go. So this is basically how you set up projectiles like that. And then you can of course do all kinds of crazy stuff. You can do like curves or sinuses or whatever. This is just a very simple basic thing that covers all the weird anomalies that Yomi has. Yep, there you go. I hope it helped you, and good luck.